When PSVR1 launched all the way back in 2016, one of the first games we all played was Until Dawn Rush of Blood. And it delivered, giving us plenty of targets, an awesome art style, and some really terrifying levels. But most of all, I think it satisfied this fascination that we have with amusement parks. Especially when those amusement parks have a dark side, or when they've been shut down and this place that used to be filled with joy is suddenly dark, desolate, and eerie. So when a game like HappyFunland comes along and lets you get off the roller coaster and explore the park freely, it almost feels like developer Spectral Illusions is delivering the spiritual sequel to Rush of Blood that we all wanted. But then reality sets in.
Anyways, it being dark and all just helps set the proper mood and such.
We need to start this review from the very beginning, because HappyFunland doesn't make a good impression at all. First off, and I'm sure this will be fixed because I can't believe it's even a thing in 2024, there's no options for smooth turning. It's a baffling decision for sure, and if you're like me and you have a small play space, you're used to turning with analog sticks because you don't want to accidentally punch your bookshelves. So I was forced to use the click turning, which is extremely unimmersive and just doesn't feel good. And you walk so slow until you realize it's one of those games where you have to walk with your hand up to move at a normal speed. You know, like a first-person shooter, which this clearly isn't. It's ridiculous that you can't just click the analog stick to move faster. But I hardly had time to get upset about any of that because the NPCs talk to you non-stop. They just throw voiceovers at you constantly, and there's so much of it that some lines will get cut off because you've already triggered the next line of dialogue. I'll never understand why developers think we enjoy this. It's like having 3 screaming children running around while you're just exploring the world around you. Luckily, once you're really into the park, it's not nearly as bad. The final thing I have to get off my chest before we really even dive into the game is that you don't interact with doors or switches the way that you might expect. You want to pull a switch? Well, just wave your hand near it. It's possibly the least VRAF a game has felt in a while, but hey, it's not the end of the world.
Followers, help me get more followers for my video channel. See, I had a lot of time to learn up on this place while my legs was healing. They say they had this whole place almost completely automated. Very few actual human employees. Mostly robots or audio automatons, they call those things. I guess they were very advanced for the time period.
Despite some low-res shimmering, the absence of any true blacks, and what looks like 60 frames reprojected, either that or a game that's really struggling to keep up with the native 90, the world of HappyFunland actually looks pretty decent. There's plenty of details, the draw distance is great, there's some good variety throughout the park, and you can smash so much stuff. I love that you can pick up a dustpan and totally trash the gift shop. So you'd think the combat would be pretty great here too, but it's not. It's f***ing terrible. You never get any real weapons, just fake plastic swords, dustpans, brooms, and things laying around the park. And the animatronics act like you're not even hitting them. Sparks will fly and pieces of the characters will fall, but they barely react to being hit, and there's no haptics at all to indicate that you're doing anything right. Strangely, there are a few disposable cameras scattered around the park that kill enemies with the push of a button. Maybe light affects them? So, well, shining a flashlight while hitting them doesn't seem to help, so I don't know. It's not something that gets explained, unless it's explained in one of these audio logs that are so slow and quiet that I couldn't convince myself to care to listen to them. And that's a shame, because having to fight all these animatronics means the combat's a total drag, instead of the physics-based ragdoll fun I'm sure we were all hoping for. In fact, physics doesn't seem to play a role here at all. There's mini golf holes strewn throughout the park that'll unlock new sections, but there's no clubs to be found. So you're left using whatever you can find to putt with, which means nothing ever feels right. And instead of trying for a good score, I was just happy to get the ball in the hole so I could move on. The same goes for the 80 collectibles. After a while, I stopped caring about finding them too, partially because I was bored by the game and just wanted to push forward, and partially because there's no platinum trophy. So what's the incentive?
Hey, what's that button on the wall there do?
Another main attraction in HappyFunland are the rides, which also failed to impress. You'd think a park like this would have some really exciting rides, but most of them are super short, super boring, and the longer ones became something I dreaded, because they just weren't any fun in the slightest. Having prop pistols to shoot prop enemies, it's just filler. It's also not scary. In fact, the whole game is just lacking any kind of real suspense or fear or something you might feel from walking through an abandoned amusement park. Everything's kind of gray and doesn't take advantage of the PSVR2's true blacks. The soundtrack is all background noise, and there are missed opportunities for great scares around every corner. But strangely, if you push through the game, HappyFunland actually rewards you with a pretty decent final act that, no spoilers, throws you around, tests your VR legs, and for the first and last time in the game, is actually exciting. And considering the budget price, might actually be worth playing through to experience.
No! Dang!
HappyFunland clocks in at around 3.5 hours, and I've got to say that they sure pack in a lot of variety during that time. You're mini-golfing, fighting animatronics, figuring out where to go, hunting collectibles, listening to audio logs, and seeing a pretty big theme park. They even include the aforementioned pretty epic moments toward the end of the game. And I've been told by some hardcore Disney fans that there's a lot of Easter eggs and references to Disney parks throughout the game that made the whole thing worthwhile to them. So if that describes you, awesome. But for the rest of us looking for a good game to go alongside these Easter eggs, some basic improvements would have made things a lot more enjoyable. Better combat, better controls, a better frame rate, and working on the atmosphere to turn this quirky amusement park into something actually frightening to be inside of. I think HappyFunland has potential, like a lot of potential, but the game that I just played is way too boring, and honestly, somewhat of a chore to get through.
My legs are twice the size, I reckon, and jacked up on me. All right, we're almost here now, just up ahead. There it is, your entryway into the fun park. Just follow that storm drain all the way down and it'll lead you right to the main electrical room where you can hopefully get the power back on for the whole park. I admit it ain't the most sanitary napkin way in, but it'll do you. Oh, and we can discuss your payment after you get all the footage I need. Fair enough? Once you get that pile restored, you should be able to explore the whole place. Ride on some rides and stuff. You like fun parks, right? Well, this should be fun. You should consider the fun you'll have here as part of your compensation. One of the perks of the job, if you will. Well, go on now. Get to it. I ain't got all night.